Your hand, you touch my back. We spin around, the instructor asks. Trip on our feet, weak at the knees. Look in your eyes, I see you looking at me. Swag and sway, it's a country someplace. No other words, so we sing along. In these small towns, they all know your name. Talk and move on while things stay the same. Yeah. This long winter cold will turn into spring. Romantic nights are gonna turn into days. You'll move away, you'll fall in love. You'll buy a house with them stars above. Taught me to sing, not to fear a thing, not to be ashamed of the dreams in my head. I'll write you a song, hope you sing it along. Hope you fall in love while I stay in tune.
Are there any, like, what would be a dream project for you to get to do and to bring to an audience? If you could, like, let's say if you were the architect of the universe and you could pick a project that you knew would get, say, national recognition to make, what would you choose to distribute to that audience?
That's a tough question. I know the variables that I don't know like a specific project, but like the variables that I've identified that are important to me. So autonomy over my time, is like something I cherish so much. So if it's something I can like control to a certain degree, that's really important to me. If I can bring in friends and colleagues and like build my own team, that's important to me. If I can showcase, like we've talked about, if I can showcase this region in a way that's authentic. I also don't want to talk about it. I'm not like here to put a PR spin on Tabor and make it seem like it's anything it's not. I make fun of it just as much as I champion it. And that changes on a whim. You know, some days I'm pissed off and not feeling good, and then Tabor gets a bad rap, and some days I'm feeling inspired and motivated and like community minded, and it's rah. And so it's like the lens and my perspective changes based on my moods, and I think that's like I think that's okay. It's not accurate, but again, I'm not pretending to be a journalist. I'm pretending to be a person expressing himself. But what would I do to answer your question, what would I do for a national project? Man, again, there's a story I heard recently about I think she was called like the Pistol Packin' Mama, who was a woman who murdered her husband, and I think she was American, and then somehow she ended up in Tabor, Alberta, lived for like the last remaining 20 years of her life unbeknownst to anyone. And then she had this sort of like Bonnie and Clyde kind of history with men and robbing banks, and it's like everyone that I ran into is like, "Hey Tanner, have you heard about that?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Of course she ended up in Tabor." I'm like, "Of course she ended up in Tabor." Like that, it's on brand. So my partner told me, she's like, "Give it 3 years. If no one else has done anything, that story's yours." And I'm like, "That's fair. If there's someone more qualified to handle that story, power to him. And if no one's going to do it, then I'm going to fill that gap." So that would be a national project that's like, you know, almost like crossing international borders, but is also I want a project to challenge me. So with Wild Bill, it was like just out of my weight class. It was like I thought we were going to get more funding. I thought I was going to have more help. I thought it was going to go different. And then when push came to shove, it was like a gritty DIY project where we were like slightly dishonest with certain non-actors. We begged, borrowed, and stole to get it done, but it was out of my weight class. And then we toured it independently, and when it scares the crap out of you, I think that's a good thing for an artistic project. If it's not scaring you, you're probably just recreating what you've already done.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about pushing the envelope. Also, like, there's a rawness that people love. I bring this up a lot, but there's one part in Slacker, the Richard Linklater film, where a boom mic drops into the scene, and I just love how, like, they clearly didn't have the budget and the time to reshoot it and fix it. They might not have even noticed when it happened, and but like the message that sends is like, this is an enjoyable film, and there's humanity to it, which sort of it's like getting into like Slacker rock. It's like, wait, I can make music that people will like. It's like I feel like you go to university and someone introduces you to Pavement or to, like, you know, those kinds of bands.
What's the Pavement lyric? And we're going to the chorus now, as Stephen Malcolmus ushers us into the chorus. You know, clearly telling the band at some point that was when we transitioned to the chorus, and then just leaving that as part of the song. But it's like it lets you see. I think when things get too polished, the natural response is that people want something human and messy. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing something at an indie level, it's always going to be human and it's always going to be messy, whether you like it or not. And you can only polish it up so much. And I think that I probably think too, as we move closer to AI generated content and move into that future, I think that human messiness is going to be even more valuable. That's just a hunch.
It is weird. I can see, like, on the front of the AI stuff, like, my dad, I can tell, is, like, trapped in an AI YouTube loop. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I do think the same way there's an amount of people, and maybe it's not most people, that love, like, an indie music scene and like to go buy records. Those people will exist that are still enthusiasts of artists and of what they make. Or even the same way that, like, there's always going to be an audience for classic cars, for hot rods, for like something custom. And it's not most people. It's not a practical way to get to work, but like, and it might not be a practical way to make the new Marvel Universe film, but the audience for that's always gonna exist. What do you think about, like, we've had conversations personally about the various, like, I find that I really end up loving, like, a lot of, like, Australian TV shows and British stuff, and then when I think of, like, what internationally gets recognized from Canada, it's like Fubar and the Trailer Park Boys,
which are both very outsider in their own right, especially Fubar.
Yeah,
well, no, both of them are equally.
But they're both, like, silly, I guess. Like, do you have any thoughts on, like, on why the, like, international cultural, like, visual media, like, TV and movie contributions from Canada are these things like How to Be Deadly and Fubar, and, like, I feel like they're all something like some kind of silly depiction of a facet of, like, life in Canada, but rarely are they, like, the kind of, like, I don't know, gritty or dramatic things that I end up seeing from Europe, for example. Like, do you have any thoughts on why culturally that's what we have a tendency to succeed with?
Well, Australia is an interesting comparison because Canada and Australia, as far as, like, funding film, have a similar model where it's like, a lot of government funded content. I think that Australia has more of an appetite for the absurd, and they're maybe more supportive of those, like, auteur directors or those letting people experiment, where you look at what's funded in the film world or TV world in Canada, and it's neutered to say it in a vulgar way, and safe to say it in a politically correct way, which will only get you so far. If you're not, especially if that most of the content made here is probably underfunded compared to, like, the American counterpart. The other problem I see in Canada is I see a lot of people just trying to pretend they're American. So making content that is, not descriptive where it is, and trying to double as, like, it's almost like sometimes we make content that just tries to pass for, like, be American, and that's the goal. And if that's your goal, you're screwed from the start. That's terrible. It's like, you at least try to, like, outdo them. And if it's like David versus Goliath, if you're trying to, like, compete with, like, an American film with, like, a bigger budget and bigger marketing power, you're not going to do so by going head on. You're going to do so by being obscure and creative and innovative, like Fubar or the Trailer Park Boys, where they're, like, they thought outside the box. They did, like, really made, both those are really good character studies too, where, like, they develop these really rich, interesting characters that are a lot more empathetic than people give them credit for. Look at the history of Trailer Park Boys. It's like Randy and Leahy were, to the best of my knowledge, the, like, first openly gay characters on Canadian TV, and there's never any, like, slurs about it. They were always they were made fun of, but not for that reason. So there's and the characters actually really care about each other. Like, one of my favorite parts is when of a Trailer Park Boys episode is when they're in a gunfight and Ricky yells, like, "Stop, somebody's hurt." And it's like, it just, the whole time they annoy each other, but they're a community, and they're also people living, under the poverty line, and they have to work together even though they're driving each other absolutely bonkers. And that's accurate. That's, like, that's a true sentiment. So I think that maybe that's what I also prefer Australian film and TV, to Canadian, and I think that that's my hunch. I also think that we've been having this conversation publicly for a long time, and I know Matt Johnson from Nirvana, the band, the show, has been very vocal about art funding, and especially in film and TV, and why it needs to change. And I've seen some change, but I haven't seen like an overhaul of the industry by any means. And I think we're probably destined for much of the same.
I do feel like there's no shortage of creative people coming up with worthwhile things, and even like with Wild Bill, I see the potential in it so much for it to, like, with a bit of a budget, right? Like, if you could spend some more time on a full length Wild Bill, like, I really think that could turn into a FUBAR type of thing. Like, he is just the like right compelling character too, but even like the enthusiasm people have for the Bill shirts, like,
Yeah.
the people see the film and they're like, yes, let me be in on the joke now.
Yeah.
And it's like people, yeah, I don't know, there is.
It's a wild concept that we sold T-shirts for the film, but bands have been selling merchandise forever. But why don't films sell T-shirts? Why don't authors sell T-shirts? Like,
Yeah.
I thought about that. I'm like, why aren't why don't we have Miriam Toews shirts that are just as cool as like the Tragically Hip shirts? And it's just a flaw in marketing. And so maybe that's the one little thing we can we can bring to the table is like, hey, filmmakers, let's sell merchandise because people want it and people want to support you. And I think oftentimes they're just not given enough opportunity to do so.
Mm-hmm. And YouTubers do it, and like,
yeah, totally.
I don't know.
That's a good example. People
buy the merch. I think too, like, the power in community building. Like, when I was at Under the Big Sky in Whitefish, I saw a guy wearing the same Benjamin Todd shirt that my wife has. I was like, hey, were you at that show? And it's a reason to start a conversation in a way that like a Metallica shirt is not. Like, if you're
good point
in on the ground floor of something and that T-shirt that guy's wearing, you're gonna walk up and start a conversation. Like, if I saw a Keep Tabor Wild shirt anywhere, I'd go engage in a conversation about Wild Bill with that person. And there's like that is so much of why we like counterculturally, like why skateboarders wear certain brands and why like
it's a flag, man. It's like you're waving the freak flag. It's hoping that you can interact and meet other people, like-minded people. I think, anyways. And I think you're right. If it's a shirt that's worn by millions, it doesn't have that effect. If it's a shirt that's worn by thousands, it has that effect. And if it's a shirt that's worn by hundreds, then that's a special bond.
I've even had like wearing. I've got a hat from a Wyoming-based Western outfitter, and like the pilot of my United flight from Chicago talked to me about it. I was like, I haven't seen one of those hats since I had one. Like,
nice.
I think that's. I think in this environment of the internet, like, people really want to be a part of real things. Like, certain people are so starved for real things that if you give them any opportunity to actually connect with fellow people in real life, they love to. And so maybe the Gonzo screening thing is like the future too. That could become its whole own culture of like brewery screenings or whatever. Cause like,
I think there's room for it. I personally think that, as we're oversaturated with music and entertainment, I think that the product is becoming less important, but the experience is becoming, way more important than it's ever been before. People always talk generically in film about like Sean Baker, when he won the Oscar this year, he said, support movie cinemas. And I agree with him to a degree, but I also look at the movie going experience and I'm like, it's entirely corporate. It's like, I go to the mall and I spend, a copious amount of money on a ticket and a copious amount of money on like unhealthy snacks. And then I sit at like quite a small screen, with like, boring basic people that I don't want to hang out with, and the experience is so poor. And I'm like, well, I don't think that's the cinema experience that we were ever supposed to enjoy. And I still don't mind doing that once in a while, but I think there's a million ways to show cinema that's not being that, again, music's done a better job with. Music's done a way better job with, like, taking on the road, like, from house concerts to theaters to bars to coffee shops to anywhere and everywhere there's music. But there's film is, like, somehow been siloed to, mall movie chains, and it's like it's never been easier to do it. It's also easier to, it's like very inexpensive to screen a film. And yeah, I understand that, like, a Christopher Nolan movie needs a different treatment than, like, Wild Bill, and I'm very well aware of that. I'm also very well aware of, like, what lands in a bar versus what doesn't. And of course there's different, like, needs for different genres of film, but I think that film's been very uncreative with its distribution.
I mean, I watched something about how the film industry is, like, getting the music industry treatment right now. Like, it's all coming crashing down for them when these, like, there was kind of a great age of Netflix when they took a lot of risks and financed a lot of really cool stuff. But what I didn't realize at the time was that was a loss leader investment to corner the market.
Yeah.
And now there's this big issue where all the streamers are trying to turn profitable, and they're becoming super risk averse, and you're seeing it across the board. It's like, is it maybe time for the film industry to take a page, like you're talking about, out of the, like, lo-fi indie rock book and start doing things DIY? Like, I'm wondering, with that change happening, people still want content, but maybe it is going to open up a big opportunity for all these lesser told kinds of stories to exist in maybe a new, different space for the enthusiasts, for the people who don't just want to be fed another superhero collaboration where they can get their signature meal from their fast food restaurant of choice with it.
Yeah. I also think film's over budgeted. Again, not to, like, compare apples and oranges, but as you know, as a musician, it's like there's roles and there's terms that we have not experienced in our lifetime. So, for example, like a producer, like a true music producer. Neither of us have experienced working with that role as it existed in, like, the 50s, 60s, 70s, where it's like it was exclusively their idea and they never touched a dial and they never rolled out a cable. We've worked with, like, hybrid, where it's been, like, primarily an engineer who has, like, a little bit of producer thought that they get to throw out there, but, like, and that's been a reaction to, like, the resources. It's like there isn't the money to have, like, a dedicated producer, a dedicated engineer, a dedicated assistant in that room with us, because we'd all go broke. But in film, it seems like they've hung on to some of these, like, antiquated roles that I don't think need to be there. I think most films could be made way cheaper. I also look at, like, when I start to budget a film that's going to be like, potentially a union project, it inflates the budget by, like, 50%. And it's like, well, I'm very pro-union, but this might be the difference of, like, me being able to do it and me not being able to do it. Mm-hmm. So I'm very, like, I'm, like, wrestling with that, and it just seems like there's, like, it's never been, with technology, it's never been easier and cheaper to make a film, but some of these budgets are still very, very antiquated compared to music. It's like, it's just so. I think there's room to trim things up in a lot of these projects where possible, and not in shoot days, but just in, like, where money's getting wasted.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up here, I think I had you early on the Weird in High School podcast and would have asked you this question before, but I'm sure your perspective is different now. If you went back, like, let's say, to yourself at the point that you were moving to the big city to pursue your art, with the perspective you have now, what kind of advice would you share with yourself then?
Oh, man. It's a small thing, but one thing I did wrong out of the gates is that, you know, I came with all the ambition in the world and I spread myself too thin, which is a common theme. But, you know, I'd volunteer at different places that were organizations I wanted to get involved in, and I didn't have the time to do it properly. And so some of the, I could have made better inroads by being a better volunteer and like committing to the role. So that would be one thing where I've seen friends just be a good volunteer for a year or two and then be embraced by different, you know, organizations they're trying to be affiliated with. I think that in art, there's usually a front door, and it's wise to go and try the front door. But if it's locked, that's when you go to the alley. But you don't start with the alley. You know, it's like if you can walk in the front door and like the red carpet's gonna roll out for you, take it. Like if that's the opportunity, I'm not jealous or mad. I'm encouraging of anyone that has that privilege. It's not usually the way it's worked for me, and that's okay. And that's where I'm like finding alternative strategies to do this stuff. But yeah, I would tell my younger self too. It's like, hey, just go up and ask and like network. And if that person doesn't want to be involved or work with you in any capacity, that's okay. Then you can go try the back door. But like sometimes I think I miss just like being shy and being from a small town and for whatever excuse I can come up with, missing just trying to see if the front door was locked. And sometimes there's like always take the path of least resistance if it's available.
Are there any specific like ways in which you punk rocked your way into the path of more resistance, where the path of least resistance is more obvious?
Yeah, there's a lot of unnecessary like hardcore rules that were applied to the first band I played in, where it was like it was militant as like a rite of passage, and there was like I felt like I needed to put everyone through a difficult experience so we proved ourselves, or I can make myself feel proven. But you don't need to put those limitations upon yourself, because the world's going to put enough hardships upon you. You don't need to like add insult to injury. So I think that there was like with our first band, it was like there was a no hotel policy for a long time. And we speculated, we're like, you know, if we would have like got better sleep on those tours, would things have ultimately changed? I think no. I think that we just got better stories because I put us in unusually difficult situations. But that's all from like a hardcore punk mentality, where it was like you're coming up with these rules to try to navigate this, like try to keep control over something that's so messy and weird and doesn't have a playbook. So that was probably probably some sort of deeper psychological issue that I was dealing with. But I think I would have had, looking back, I probably would have had a little more grace for myself and for those in that circle. But we all did felt like we paid our dues, and I guess I have no question that I paid my dues at this point. I don't know how important that is, but at the time it was important to me to tell myself that I paid my dues, whatever that means.
Yeah, I even used to like feel like the idea of selling out I used to be really attached to. And now I'm like, man, if anyone offered me the opportunity to like sell out but still like work in my dream field, like that's so much better than like becoming a lawyer or whatever. Like even if it's like you can sell out and become a pop songwriter, it's like it's still songs. Anyway. But sweet. Well, thanks for chatting with me today.
Thanks for making the time for Word in High School.
Sweet. All right.